Hello, and welcome to Pentecost 2025 webinar series. My name is Gladys Guerrero, your host.
And my name is Jose Cortez Jr., and I'm your co-host. So good to be here with you, Gladys.
So good to be here with you. We have been having amazing presentations so far. Who do we have today, Jose?
Today, we have some very important people. First of all, I would like to introduce our assistant to the Vice President for Digital Media of the North American Division, and it is none other than my friend, our colleague, Rohan Wellington. Or should I say Dr. Rohan Wellington?
Rohan is yeah.
All right, very good. Who else do we have?
We also have Shane Hostetler.
I think you got that right.
I think I got it right. He is the Associate Director for Professional Services.
And what a great job they do here in our building.
They do.
This
Thank you
so
so
good.
much.
And then all the way from Honolulu, Hawaii, we have a digital missionary, someone whom I admire and love for years, and have known him since, I was going to say since your youth, but you're still a young man, right? So, Justin Coe. Justin is one of our specialists in media ministries in the North American Division with a lot of credibility for some of the things that God has done through you. So thank you for coming all the way from Hawaii to be here with us.
Yes, thank you for being here. So today our topic is how to plan an online evangelistic series. So we want to start with you, Justin. Can you tell us about what is it that you're proposing to our audience to do?
Well, one of the things that I love about online evangelism is that it works perfectly with our theme, Pentecost 2025. This idea of getting the gospel to the entire world, reaching thousands with a life-changing message of what Jesus has done for his children. One of the things I love about it is that by sharing the gospel online, you can in fact reach thousands, if not millions of people. And we've seen this happening every single week for the last several years since we've made a big emphasis here at the North American Division for online evangelism. For example, just 3 weeks ago, I was leading a Bible study, as I do every single Sunday on the internet. 50 to 100 people show up every single week. And I had a 52-year-old woman come into the online Bible study her very first time. And through tears, she asks the question, what is the gospel? And the context is she has an 18-year-old daughter who has been going through some really dark times and has been contemplating self-harm. And the mother is struggling because she doesn't know how to pass on something of hope, some good news to her daughter, because she was raised in an atheist home where her parents told her that she was a mistake, she should have never been born, that there's nothing good in this world. And this has set this 52-year-old woman on a path of despair and hopelessness. And she found herself in this Bible study gathering, asking the question, what is the gospel, so that I can actually provide hope to my daughter who I love. And 3 weeks ago, I had the privilege of welcoming her into the family of Christ as she prayed a prayer confessing Jesus as Lord for the very first time. Online evangelism is still making impacts.
Amen. That is powerful.
So Pastor Rohan Wellington, tell us a little bit in the context of Pentecost, how the North American Division is encouraging churches, pastors. I'm an elder at a local church. Have never done evangelism before, and I'm thinking that the best way perhaps to reach some of the people in our community is online. What type of advice, talk to us a little bit about what you would do in this case.
That's awesome. The Pentecost initiative is about getting churches and lay people, lay pastors and lay people to come together and do mission. Reach the gospel, evangelize their community. But there's also that digital space that we all occupy that's not only limited here, but also has a global outreach, which represents what the gospel says, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached to all the world as a witness. And so churches have that opportunity to impact that global space and should plan collectively. Pentecost 2025 does allow for online evangelism. And once the church signs up and takes the decision, okay, we want to do that online evangelism series, then they must ask themselves a few questions. What's their plan for outreach? And what's their plan for retention? And what's their plan for decision making? How are they going to gain the attention of the individuals? What's their plan to retain the individual? And what's their plan to move the individuals into?
So are you telling us that in order to plan an evangelistic meeting, evangelistic series online, we need to do some of the similar things that we do when we plan an in-person evangelistic meeting.
Correct, correct.
It's not just putting your computer there and start talking to the computer. That's not it.
I'm
To
sure
the
Justin
cameras.
will tell you about the attention piece in that big space, but
Okay.
yeah, in the digital space. But yeah, what's the plan for attention? What's the plan for retention? What's the plan for the decision making? And that's also not only just a biblical mandate. You know, Sister White also tells us, and I like this quote, because, you know, we all like, our lay people like to hear from Sister White, so I'm giving them something
Yeah,
also.
and the pastors too.
like to hear, so I'm giving them something on the balance on that. And she says in evangelism, she says, let every worker in the master's vineyard study, plan, devise methods to reach people where they are.
Amen.
Where are they?
Very
They're online.
Online.
Very good.
We must do something out of the common course of things. We must arrest the attention. We must be deadly in earnest. I like that word. We must be deadly in earnest.
Yes.
Means we must be willing to go outside the box.
That sounds
Amen.
intense.
And-
Yes.
We must be intensely willing.
Correct.
Very
And
good.
so I encourage churches to embrace and you know, when you go on this online platform, I hope that as a result of this seminar, they'll have some tools today on how to plan for it effectively and how to gain results like this powerful testimony
Yes.
that Justin has just shared. It's just an awesome testimony.
Yes. Before we go to you, Justin, I want to hear from Shane. Shane, tell us, what is your take on this initiative when we're talking about online series?
Yeah, I think it opens up a lot of doors. It gives a lot of opportunity, even for those who feel like, boy, like public speaking is not really my thing. When you're when you're behind a camera, when you're online, your voice tends to get a little bit louder. And if we can use that for the benefit of mission, that would be fantastic. And so I think it really does opens up a lot of doors for people who may not otherwise know a way that they could do some type of outreach, that doing so online makes that available to them.
That is awesome. Okay, Justin, you have developed a framework, and that is what we want to share with our audience today. So why don't you share with us, what is SERVE?
SERVE is an acronym, and it's a framework that I think that every single church pastor, every lay leader needs to intentionally think through. When they do online evangelism, it's not as simple as saying, we're going to do a Revelation seminar. We're going to do a New Beginnings seminar, though those are all great tools. One of the questions that we need to ask ourselves and ultimately answer for ourselves and for those who would attend is, why should they care and why should they relate to this thing that we're doing? It's different than when you host a meeting in your church, when you have a literally captive audience who maybe won't leave the building. When you present online, you're competing with everything else that exists in the world, the news cycle, the latest sports game, all the latest social media drama. And so we want to be very clear about what is the value that we're bringing forward to people and why should people care. And so we offer this acronym, SERVE, S-E-R-V-E, which stands for Solution, Estimated Time, Relevant Audience, Validate Pain Points, and ultimately ensure results. These are ingredients, if you will, that can all be mixed together to help your evangelistic opportunity stand out from all the different noise that exists on the internet and ultimately get more people to show up so that they can hear the good news.
That is great. Okay, so I am a layperson in church, and I'm a young person that loves technology, and I said, well, you know, I don't want to do something in church. I want to do something online. How do I get started?
The first thing that I would encourage you to think about is, what is the solution that you are offering? It's one thing to say that we are doing a series. And that's very good, that's descriptive, it's important to start there. But if you can flip your perspective from what are we doing to what is the benefit for them, the audience, and you think through what is the solution or what is the answer that you're providing ultimately. And the clearer you get on your solution, it requires you to get clearer on the problem. And these two work very closely together, and it ultimately is why people end up signing up. When you say, I'm doing a Revelation seminar, that's fantastic, but ask yourself the question, well, what problem does this Revelation seminar answer? And if we don't have an answer to this, then the chances are that those who will be receiving your advertisement or see your videos, they'll be asking themselves the same question. If they don't have an answer, then they'll just keep scrolling.
In other words, you need to scratch where it itches.
That's correct.
If you're scratching and it is not itching, that's a problem.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
that will inform what type of series or program you do online, because then you're trying to meet felt needs, as you said.
And this is exactly what Jesus did. When he showed up with a crowd of people, what did he do? He ministered to their needs as someone who cared for them.
Yeah.
And so those needs, sure, were maybe in the area of food or physical healing or companionship. And so Jesus met their needs and ultimately revealed how the gospel provides for this holistic picture.
So first of all, there is a need to see what people are looking for. What is it that they wake up in the morning, every morning thinking about? Or what is the one thing or the things that keep them up at night? Would you say that that's perhaps, a way of, how do you do that?
I think that's a great way to begin. That's one way. A second way that you can look at is do an inventory of your own life and the team that you have. What are the skill sets that we have, and what are we good at doing? So I'll give you an example. I'll be a little bit vulnerable, if that's okay.
Yes.
We're at Pentecost 2025.
Only a few people watching.
Only a few of us. Okay.
Only a few hundreds or thousands watching.
One of the things that the gospel has transformed my life as of the last 10 years was for maybe about 15, 20 years, I struggled with an addiction to LUST. And so for me, one of the pain points that I felt and one of the areas of tension that caused angst and stress, this shame and guilt, this alienation, was this addiction to this thing. And ultimately, it was through the clear preaching of the gospel that helped me to realize that I didn't have to accept the lies that the enemy sold me that said that I was less than because I struggled with something. That the clear preaching of the gospel revealed my identity as a child of God, and ultimately, it revealed the victory that I could receive by faith because of Jesus.
Amen.
And so what was clear to me was that, if I want to preach the gospel to people, one avenue in is through my story. And one of the ways that Jesus has absolutely transformed my life is to set me free from this addiction. So I can imagine that if I want to do an online evangelistic series, I could approach it from the perspective of addictions and healthy recovery from a gospel-centered perspective. So that I have a clear problem. There are people out there who feel the pain, who are itching, to use Jose's words.
Analogy.
Exactly, correct. And so that way, when I say, hey, this is what my seminar is, rather than just saying I'm doing a Bible seminar, I'm doing a gospel seminar, I'm doing a seminar on how the gospel liberates anyone who's struggling with addiction, even if you've struggled for decades and are struggling to find hope and healing.
Wow.
That's a much more pointed solution to a felt problem.
That is awesome.
I love that.
I love it.
Gladys, let me ask a question here, because once you know what the needs are, how do you go about promoting? And this is a question open to the three of you. What's the best way? How do you promote?
There are various methods that can be used. Social media advertising is one of the big things if you're especially on that digital space. Email marketing is another one you can do by sending out your emails. Digital ads, of course, as well as old-fashioned print advertising to draw people to that space. But one of the things I also want to follow up on is what of the series is that you develop, whether it be one on addiction or one of the things that's happening nowadays is, even though we are so connected to all these devices, we're suffering from the epidemic of loneliness and depression. And so those are things
Mental health.
And health, mental health. Those are things that can be addressed. Whatever you choose to do, it's very important that from a Pentecost 2025 framework that we understand that there's like 15 touch points. So if you're developing this series, you need to have at least 15 touch points that you're connecting with these individuals. And how you do that, I'm sure we can walk through that method.
Well, this actually brings us to the second letter of serve, if I can.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Serve. So we start with the solution. What is the clear solution that we're offering? The second letter is E for estimated timeline. So you want to communicate a vision of what's to come.
Yes.
So estimated timeline can refer to when something starts, how long it might be, how many sessions there are, and maybe some of the incentives to sign up today so that you generate this interest and generate actual steps in the process. I know that Shane here wanted to talk a little bit about what you could do as far as incentivizing people to show up to an event.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So it could be any number of things, but certainly even for me, we get these opportunities to like fill out surveys or that type of thing. If I'm filling out a survey, fine, maybe I'll do it. If you pay me a little bit of money, I'll probably actually take the time to do it. So it doesn't have to be money necessarily, but it could be some other type of tangible good.
Yes.
If it's speaking to this solution, maybe it is an ebook or even like a tangible gift in hand, something that they could get. It could be as something as fun as like a new pair of shoes if they, attend a certain number of sessions or something.
Yeah.
Whatever would fit well with the audience that you're trying to reach. That if you can think about, hey, when I'm budgeting for this, let's put some of that budget into something that could really incentivize and help.
It is okay to incentivize.
Yes, yes.
The whole point here is to make sure that people
That
come.
people come.
Yeah.
I remember when I was younger, and they will give stickers.
Yeah.
And I remember we used to collect them in our Bibles.
Yeah.
So every day when we would go, we'll give the Bible, they'll put a sticker. And at the end of the week, if we had a certain amount of stickers, we will get a prize. So always get something to get that attention, that desire to come back. I like that.
One of the beautiful things about having a very clear solution and therefore a very clear problem that you're solving is that the incentive can be right in line with what they're signing up for.
Exactly.
So let's imagine I just got off a 15-hour travel day from Oahu to come here to
Like
Maryland.
you just did.
Like I
Just
did.
imagine.
So is it morning or evening or afternoon? I'm just asking.
My body does not know. But let's imagine that I was inclined to look for a massage so that my body can feel better from sitting stiffly in
I think he's
an airplane.
giving us hints.
I'm dropping hints here. But let's imagine that I saw an ad that said, hey, we have a 60-minute massage, but if you sign up in the next 15 minutes, you'll get an additional 30 minutes for free. You see how that the incentive that gets to action is directly in line with the value that I want.
Yes.
Which is another way of saying that if I know my solution, so let's imagine that it's in the use case that I'm offering, an addiction recovery program. Let's say that you can attend the seminar, but if you sign up today, I'll offer you a one-on-one 30-minute consult so that you can ask your questions, which is another way of saying I'll do a digital house visitation where I can pray for you, I can encourage you, I can answer your questions, and ultimately help you experience the transformation that
I
you're
love
looking
that
for.
concept.
I like that.
Digital house
Visitation.
visitation.
That's correct.
So visitation is done also online, huh?
I
Yeah,
love that.
This is the beautiful thing is that when you understand the needs of your audience, doing the simple things that we at the church are excellent at, which is sitting across the table with you, praying for you, supporting you, answering a question, tying you into community. These are things that people typically pay for in the general market. And so
Yes.
what we can do is connect our ideal audience member to people who are within our church community who've also experienced transformation. And so let's say that there's a young person that is feeling despair and hopelessness. And so because of their involvement in our program, they're looking for a mentor so they have accountability. This could be an example of incentive to encourage signing up.
I love that. I love
And that's
that, yes.
driving the engagement in the process because engagement is very, very important.
Yes.
You don't want to just have the series and then just, if you're doing it on one of those social media platforms, you just broadcasting and you're not necessarily driving a level of engagement. So the engagement is very important because it leads you to transformation.
Absolutely.
And you want to have that process with that individual.
That's awesome. Justin, can you talk us through the next letter?
The next letter is R, and you want to think about it as the relevant audience. This, I would say, and I'm sitting amongst ministry professionals, so take everything I say with a grain of salt, but I would say that this is the one that most professional ministers struggle with the most. And why? It's because our heart is in a good place. We want to reach everyone with the good news. And so when you ask them, who is this series for? Well, it's really for everyone.
Yeah.
And that's good. But in the online space, in order to stand out amongst the noise, you have to be very clear about who is your relevant audience, which is another way of saying you need to be clear on who this series is not for.
Yes.
And that's okay. It's okay to single people out and say this might not be for you because in the internet, there are millions and millions and millions of people that you could be reaching. And so the more pointed you get, the more specific your messaging is. And ultimately, it'll create this sensation of, my goodness, this person has created this for me.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately what you're looking for. And so we want to have a clear idea of who we're reaching for. Now, you can think about it through some very elementary levels, and this is good, so I'm not knocking it, but let's encourage deeper thinking in this. You can ask, well, is it for old people or young people, men versus women, people that are affluent or not? And you can go through particular demographic breakdowns, and that's good. But in the online space, what I think that works more than thinking about a demographic is what I call a psychographic. And so you want to think about the journey of a person who is dealing with the felt problem in search of the solution. And so a psychographic might be someone who's dealing with feelings of guilt, shame, and condemnation. The psychographic might be someone who is feeling hopeless because they've tried everything, but it doesn't work. They might be on the verge of giving up hope in their faith because no matter how much they've prayed, they have not experienced transformation. And so when I talk about the relevant audience, I'm talking about something very, very, very specific.
Yes.
And by being clear on who I'm targeting, it influences the way that I market the message.
That is
And
beautiful.
marketing includes the branding. That includes how the imagery
It comes
that's
out,
used,
yes.
even in the personnel that's put up to participate in the program and in the outreach. All those things are very, very important in the
Very
process.
good. And I
Yeah,
think it impacts the budget as well, right?
Sure, yeah, it sure can. And just to add something else onto that, if we're becoming much more specific with who the audience is, we shouldn't be afraid if at the end of the day that audience number is maybe smaller than maybe we want to see the thousands and millions, no question.
Yeah.
But if it was less, that's okay because it then becomes a lot more effective at reaching those individuals. We're often, if we're like, hey, let's cast this thing really wide and we're going to get a low percentage of that cast, well, if we're becoming much more specific, then we might be able to get a greater return on that investment.
The thinking around this, again, comes from a good place. We want to reach everybody with our message because the gospel ultimately is for everyone.
For
Amen,
everyone,
of
yes.
course. And yet what we see on the advertising perspective is the more particular about who this is for and thus who it is not for,
successful.
your advertising becomes much more successful and much more affordable.
Affordable.
When your message is this is for everybody, the advertising algorithms struggle to know who to put this information in front of.
Yeah.
And so if you're paying for a registration for an online webinar or an online evangelistic, for example, you might be paying, let's call it $10 per registration for round numbers perspectives. If you were more selective with who this is for, who the relevant audience is and who it is not, what you might see is that the cost per registration might plummet down to $1 instead.
Hey.
And so the good news is that by being more specific, you're actually more effective in the
So
online
sometimes less is more.
space. 100%.
And I think it's important to highlight in the context of Pentecost 2025 that the budget allocation that comes from the North American division allows you to use some portions of it for your marketing purposes. And this is very important because if you're trying to reach a target audience, you have the resources as a local church in Pentecost 2025 to be able to be market. And you can help me with this one, Justin. Don't be afraid to spend the money. Meaning, don't be afraid to invest in marketing your outreach.
Excellent. So we want to make this clear that there are $3,000 that are available for churches that sign up, that have registered, and who still may register, in order to be able to carry out an evangelistic campaign, evangelistic series online. Correct?
Yes, and that 1,000 of that can be used for equipment. And I know Shane may want to add to this, but that's in addition to what your local church or local conference or so. So that's not it all, but that's what's coming from our end, and can be used to help with equipment and that type of.
Okay, so let me ask this. By now we have this. You had to identify the need. You had to provide a solution. You had to get your relevant audience. What comes next? Now that you have the problem, you have a solution, you have your relevant audience, what do you do next?
One of the things that I would highly suggest is get clear on what is the pain points. And so V in SERVE stands for validate pain points as obstacles. It's very helpful for you to put yourself in the thinking of your ideal target audience and to be even clear on what have they already done in an effort to solve their problem.
Okay.
Chances are you are not the very first thing that they've turned to. And so one of the great ways that you can stand out and build a sense of connection to your audience is by recognizing the journey that they've been on. And so let's imagine, for example, if I'm a fitness trainer at the local gym and I'm trying to convince someone who has been on a very rough journey when it comes to their weight, their relationship to food, maybe they're coming off an injury, for example. It might be useful for this trainer to say, hey, listen, part of my background is that I also dislocated my shoulder on the left-hand side, and so I know what it's like to attempt to rehabilitate range of motion and to build strength so that I can go rock climbing again and fill in the blank. when you're able to connect what the pain point is, what the desired outcome, the solution that they're looking for, but ultimately respect the journey that the person has been on and what they've attempted to use as solutions, you're going to build a greater sense of trust. So in the area of dealing with addiction, for example, I might want to communicate, hey, listen, even if you've been a Christian your entire life and you've been to seminars and you've read the books and you still feel like you're on the other side of a breakthrough, I want to let you know that I've been there too. I've read the books. I've read book A, B, and I might even list them by name if I was being very, very intelligent with my marketing. And I'd say, hey, listen, I read this book. It didn't work. You know that strategy that's book number 2 offered? I've tried that. It didn't work. But what I have found hope is in receiving by faith the victory that Jesus has secured for me at the cross.
Wow.
And that this is
Powerful.
different. Even if you feel like you've tried everything and you still come up short, this is for you. And so being able to validate the pain points that they're going through is a good way to connect, but also provide a sense of hopefulness with what's to come.
That is awesome. Can you talk to us about the last E?
The last E would be to ensure results. And so this is where ultimately your testimony comes in very, very powerfully. You want to be able to speak not from a place of just mere theory, although the theory is great, not mere theology, though of course the theology is great, but we want to be able to speak from a testimony. Can you share a story about how the gospel has impacted and transformed your life?
Yes.
And the more that you're able to connect your story to the other person's story, the more that hopefulness arises and the willingness to engage with the gospel that that person will have. And if you can do this through your own personal testimony, as well as testimonies of those within your community, those that you've worked with before, this just continually compounds the effect of hopefulness and ultimately drives engagement.
Okay, great. I think I got it.
You think so?
No. Okay, I really want to do this. I mean, but I want you to walk me through, like, with your framework.
Sure.
Where can I get this information so I can just write it down and just have a clear understanding of where I'm going, how to start, where to get where I want to go?
Sure. Well, very sharp viewers will notice that you and I are cheating with our little handout here. And the good news is that we're giving away these handouts for free to anyone that wants to look at it so that you'll be able to download the notes. But also in the notes, we have a handful of examples of what this could look like. And so again, the idea with this SERVE framework is that you're ultimately curating all of the ingredients to put together for a good recipe. So we're talking about 5 important key things that you need to be clear on in order to host a successful evangelistic series. But one of the questions that people are going to have next is, well, what do I do with it?
Yes.
I've got all my ingredients together. What do I do with this information? And so we have this handout that's going to be provided for anyone who wants it, as well as examples of what it might look like to convert this information into useful messaging.
Dear audience, this is what Justin is talking about, and is going to be available for you. You have to have everything here. I mean, you don't even have to reinvent the wheel. He gives you so many examples that you can follow step by step. So once you have the concept of SERVE clear in your mind, then Rohan and Shane are going to give you some idea on how to put it out there online. So, Jose, tell us.
Excellent. No, I have a question. What are elements that we must include, or that you would include in an online evangelistic meeting? Would you include a prayer? Would you include a special music? Would you include a song? Would you include an appeal after the sermon?
I think it's clear. In the online space, you can go various ways. And so one of the things that Justin has shared is one method. But you also have the traditional form of evangelism online that you may want to have a preaching series that you may want to do, such as what you're speaking to. The elements that you have, music, if you're talking about music, make sure it's copyright clear. You make sure you have the clearance to do that, to be able to go live streaming, because that will take your channel down pretty quickly. So you want to be mindful of that. You want to also make sure that we have some, and Shane can probably help us with speaking to some of these elements, but in terms of technology pieces, you want to make sure you have the right pieces. I don't know, you want to speak to what that is, Shane, and tell us a little bit more?
Is it expensive? Can we get it at the
some of
local
what,
church?
and from the technical aspect, and then I come back to the other pieces.
Yeah, no, so yeah, to really improve the technology side so that what you're presenting is of good quality, The main thing is that you're really trying to ensure that the solution that you're providing is coming across clearly. So one of the best things that you can invest in, and no, it's not expensive, it's not going to break your budget, is in the audio. You really want to make sure that the microphone that you're using is of good quality. The video should be good also, but if you can't, for whatever reason, then at least the audio needs to be great, because that's going to turn people away about the most quickly. So if you're sitting at a desk, if you're making a presentation that way, a microphone that is able to sit there on your desk stand. A lot of these just plug directly into a computer over USB, is going to provide a remarkable improvement in audio quality. And you can get something that's really nice for less than a couple $100.
Beautiful.
A couple of the pieces that I'll speak to as well. Something that usually happens if you've been on a video call of any sort is usually where the camera is placed is not the same place where your monitor is. So we have this thing that we like to do when we're speaking in person, that's look into someone's eyes, right? When you're making that eye contact, it's a common preaching practice as well. You're making eye contact with your audience. Well, when you try to look into someone's eyes online, the eyes are in the camera.
Yeah.
And so when you're looking at their picture, your eyes are on a different plane, and it kind of looks funny.
Do we looking at that?
Yeah.
The camera.
Eye level.
That's right. So a way to solve that is to use something like a teleprompter. And again, these don't have to be expensive, and there's lots of different ones out there. For this example, you could use something like an iPad, and there's an app that you can extend your screen from your computer to the iPad, and then you can drag that video call right there to the iPad. So you're looking into the teleprompter and into the camera lens. So you really are looking into people's eyes. And you're seeing it.
I've seen people that are like looking up, or looking down, and it's like, hey, this guy is not connected.
That's right. So you can use that. There's other great solutions out there now that have a monitor built in that are very affordable. So any of those would be great.
Then you have some lighting here as well.
Yeah. So just an example of lighting, and again, there's lots of wonderful solutions for even a couple $100 or less. That can really make a dramatic improvement in what you look like on camera. So of course you want to follow some best practices, like if it's a sunny day, don't sit in front of a window and make a silhouette out of yourself. You can do a lot even with the lights that you have available around you, and there's tons of tutorials on that if you look that up. But if you need a little extra help for lighting, these LED lights are a fantastic solution. Of course, be mindful of how bright it is. A lot of them come with diffusers to make the light
Also
a little
with
more
the
soft.
Clothes and right. Clothes as well.
Well, yeah, for sure. Yeah, you want to make some
yeah.
mindful choices with what you put on. That also helps with with the how it looks in camera, and because it is online, you have the ability to do some testing in advance. So you can record just a little bit and watch the playback and see what it looks like and make adjustments long before you have to go online and do anything.
Very good, very good. Yes, Rohan.
So in following up also on your earlier question too, I think in the Pentecost kit that's made available for each church, there are some digital resources that are available in there.
Very
And
good.
there's a USB. I know it says dated USB. You can download it also. But we also made it available for those who want to take it, put it in their computer or on their iPad, and they want to play with it, adjust it. You can adjust the sermons. So you have those digital resources that pastors can use if they are uncomfortable, they don't know what to do in preaching that digital space, they can do that with those digital resources. One of the big things that I think in the online space, for the traditional folk who may want to use the traditional preaching method, pastors oftentimes struggle with, okay, how do I move the people from the couch to a decision? How do I make them? And so part of that is moving them from behind the electronic device into making a decision. One of the things we do encourage is using an online decision card process, and that's big in the decision-making process, so that you can, if you're using a preaching series and you're calling for decisions for Christ, then they can engage with you on that online decision card and make a decision for Christ right then and there.
So it is okay to make an appeal online.
Oh yeah, and that's part. And that's
We
part
don't have
of
the altar, but we have the chat.
no, and that's part of the requirement for Pentecost 2025's funding, and part of participating in the process is making a call for people to accept Jesus Christ publicly. And that's part of it, not being ashamed to make that decision and to make that call. And you can do it in the local church, and you can do it in that digital space. And we can help you with guiding you through that process with developing that online decision card so that people can engage with you in that while you're having that live series.
That is awesome. As we come to the end of our conversation today, okay, Jose, I just wanted to basically have them guide me to start, the process. So you go ahead and ask a question, and then I'm going to ask for final words on how you get a lay person, from beginning to end, how to start this process.
Thank you, Gladys. And I just keep coming up with questions. I'm thinking, hey, what if I have never done this? How do I do it? Mm-hmm. What are the best platforms for you to do evangelism, an evangelistic series? YouTube, IG, Instagram, what is it?
Yep. When it comes to platforms, I think that there's an argument for nearly any platforms. The ones that I enjoy using the most, surprisingly, are something as simple as Zoom or Google Meets, as far as how do I host people for an experience. Turns out, using something like Zoom works well because pretty much now everyone understands how to use Zoom.
Yes.
And so if you're attempting to funnel your audience into a third-party platform, or if they have to download a brand new app and new login codes, the friction tends to be a little too much. Versus if you send them an email or a text message upon registration, here's the link, we're starting in 3 minutes. That's an excellent way to have a high conversion rate of those who sign up and ultimately those who show up. And so the Bible study where the 52-year-old woman ultimately accepted Christ 3 weeks ago was hosted on Google Meets, a completely free platform. The larger question, though, I think that especially for an online evangelistic series is, where do we actually get these attendees from? Mm-hmm. And from that, I'm very partial to using something like Facebook and Instagram advertisements. I know that there's a lot of sideways jokes about the demographic that shows up on Facebook and things like that, but it still tends to be one of the most powerful platforms for advertisement and ultimately getting people to take a next step.
Still
the number one. Where I invest my time, energy, and my resources when I'm running advertisement, it's on Meta right now, and it's as simple as
Meta is Facebook.
Facebook and Instagram. Thank you for clarification. Yeah. So I'll leverage their platforms for advertisement because they're very powerful. And once you have some intentional strategies on ad purchasing and the strategy behind that, you can get results for a very affordable rate. All things being equal, if all I had was $3,000, I could expect...
You mean Pentecost money.
Correct. All I had was that budget. But of course, we understand that our viewers are going to their local church, they're fundraising themselves and all of that. But even if all I had was that, I would be very surprised if we couldn't get dozens, if not hundreds of people to show up for a good seminar that follows the SERVE framework. When you have this framework, not only would you get clear on what you're doing, but you're going to get clear on how to market it and how to advertise it, which is what this handout ultimately is about. This is to show you how to take these ingredients together for your public communication, to get signups, to get people to show up on the day of the event, and ultimately to make that decision to follow Jesus.
WhatsApp kind of evolved after the pandemic to being the kind of the household name, and agree with Justin, awesome app to be used. If for any reason they choose to do a live streaming or broadcasting, let's say YouTube or even Facebook or whatever, but let's say YouTube, I would strongly encourage that it's not a one-way messaging that, okay, I'm going to stream and then whoever comes. There needs to be some intentionality. And I know you like the previous code words used when Justin gave you that word about digital house visits, but I'll give you this one now.
Come on.
Digital interest coordinators. So where somebody's in that digital space, kind of helping to coalesce the engagement that's there, and then help to drive individuals who...
Is this a person that chats?
Yes, that's a person
while someone's speaking. Is this a person that is answering questions in the chat?
That's correct.
Follows up later?
Correct. And that person is in that live space because you don't want to lose that interest right there and then. So you want that person in that live space, and they've got to use, I do recommend that they use the account associated with the institution, not the individual's personal account, for authenticity. And then once that engagement is done, they can help to drive that individual, facilitate that individual to accept Christ. And we did that one time with one series, and the lady she had just, such an unfortunate situation where she was with domestic violence, had to leave her home, and she was watching and she engaged in that space. And because of that digital interest coordinator, they were able to connect with her, even though she was in another state. And we were able to get another church and pastor to get her at the side of the road and take to a hotel. She was able to stay the night there, and we're able to follow up, do Bible studies with her. And so it does work. We just want to make sure that there's a follow-up. There's somebody there to follow up in that digital space.
Gladys,
if it's like,
what happens when someone, let's say you're here in Washington, D.C., and someone in Miami or in New York City or in Los Angeles is watching you and they make a decision? What do you do?
Well, this is the beauty of online evangelism is, one, you can attempt to limit the number of times that happens through targeted advertisement, which is another way of saying that with your budget, as you're promoting your event, you can tell Meta that we want to target a 5 to 10, maybe a 20-mile radius, depending on where you live, if you live in the city or if you live out in somewhere further away. You can say, I only want to target people that are within driving distance of my local church. Okay. And so what happens is all the people who show up for your event are within driving distance of your local church, which is to say, there's a very real chance that you can successfully make this handoff from digital interest to an in-person attendee of an in-person experience. Now, God forbid, someone who sees your local experience and they have a life-transforming experience and they invite their friend who lives 4 states away. God forbid that were to happen.
Or in Tokyo.
But
it's not a God forbid. I can tell you of an actual story. I know you're joking. I know you're joking.
I'm saying this is a great problem to have. But we can start by being very intentional with who we're targeting so that the local church gets to emerge as a participating entity, as a hero. So when you're connecting them to counselors or support networks, or saying, hey, if after this 2-week seminar you want to be able to get into an accountability group and meet with other people, your small groups are an answer to that. Your elders become coaches and mentors in your program. Yes. This is exactly what we want to see.
Thank you so much. As we conclude, I want you guys to imagine someone in the local church who's excited to do this. And starting with Shane and ending up with Rohan, I want you to share one short tip of how they can do this and encouraging to do it. Go.
No pressure, just one. Okay.
One is going to be hard, man.
That's it. I'll squeeze as many as I can into one sentence, just like a run-on like Paul does, right? So as far as one tip, if I'm in a local setting and I want to do this, certainly a major tip is you definitely can do it, number one. It's 100% possible. The internet is chock full of every resource that you could possibly need, as well as our church, where we are rich with resources in being able to pull this type of a thing off. If you're concerned about the equipment or the platform or the whatever it is, Google and YouTube have the answer, more than likely, to how to do it. If you're struggling with figuring out, okay, well, if I'm in my home and I want to put this on Facebook, then how do I do that? How do I connect these pieces? How do I make my phone talk to my computer? Or how do I get this camera plugged into the other thing? All of that stuff can be figured out. Especially if you allow yourself some time to do it, you can get the answer for it. And I'm going to continue on just so I can extend my one tip here. You can do these things. God will help you if your willingness is there to do something for Him.
Amen. Justin.
My encouragement would be don't be afraid to fail. Over the last 10 years or so of doing digital missions, I've created hundreds, if not thousands, of pieces of content. And the reality is, the pieces of content that are successful are oftentimes the exception. And what I mean by that is a lot of this is trial and error. You're learning new things, and I want to encourage anyone who's trying digital missions for the first time, or you're continuing on this path, to be open to trying new things. Just earlier in preparation for this event, I had to confess to Rohan that there are certain strategies that I'm shifting in my own personal ministry because of extenuating circumstances. And it's literally from this perspective of, well, we're going to try something new. We're going to see if this works better or worse. And it's okay if it doesn't work as well as something else, because then we learn from it and able to make better decisions the next time forward.
Exactly. I would say seek to answer these 3 questions in one, because you only said I can have only one.
Yes.
What's your plan for attention? What's your plan for retention? And what's your plan for decision?
Yes, sir.
I think those, from a proclamation perspective, I think that's important. And I'll close with leave room for the Holy Spirit.
Always.
Always.
This ain't an exact science.
Yes.
There is none of us here have an exact science of how everything will work online. The Holy Spirit is at work. But have a plan, have a target audience, have a strategy, and the Holy Spirit work.
Amen. There you have it, folks. We are so happy that you were with us today. The resources are going to be available for you to download. And we pray that you be encouraged to do this for the Lord. Go ahead and try it. God is with you.
See you next time.